Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we are so excited to cover chapters 29 through 34 of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. As always, let's kick it off with our content warnings. While we're focusing today's discussion on this stretch of chapters and ACOWAR, these episodes do include spoilers for the entire ACOTAR series. These episodes do not, however, include spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas' series, except at the end of every episode, where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big spoiler warning beforehand, so you can leave the episode if you have not read the Maasverse, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and /or Crescent City callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why Elaine needs sunshine, then go listen to the audiobooks. We will be here when you're done.
Next, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
Today's rating is more for horror because while Feyre thinks Bryaxis is cute and cuddly, at least according to the internet memes, we sure don't. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
Additionally, we have so many live events coming up. Buckle up, everybody.
We are so excited to host our very first Fantasy Fangirls live show at Comedy Works South in Denver, Colorado on October 20th. We're literally so excited. We cannot believe this is real.
We'll be at the Dragon Gauntlet in Boyne City, Michigan this August 16th and 17th. And we'll be attending Swords and Shadows Masquerade by Mountains and Magic in Highlands Ranch, Colorado on November 23rd.
You can also dance the night away with us at the Fantastique Collection New Year's Eve drop party in Denver, Colorado.
And we have so much in store as podcast partners at Romantasy BookCon in Los Angeles on February 20th through 22nd in 2025.
Woo! It's a lot. So links to all of these are in the show notes. Plus, you can also check out more information there as well.
And lastly, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and have been loving this ACOTAR series journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and just more all around, please check out our Patreon.
We now have 3 membership tiers that you can join. The Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, book club, promo codes for live events like the ones we just mentioned, plus a 20% off discounted and exclusive merch store. That's all $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges on topics like the Suriel or merch designs. That is for $10 a month. And of course, we have our newest and highly requested tier, the Inner Circle, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus lots more behind the scenes content, a welcome gift including stickers, bookmarks, a side note from Lexi and I, giveaways, a private Discord channel. Yes, it's called The Dining Room. Name shout out on the podcast. Whew. That is all for $25 a month.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is, of course, in the show notes as well. And really and truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this independent podcast into our livelihood. It is all because of you, and we appreciate you so much.
And now it is time to get our inspirational music on and embrace the Nephel or Nephili philosophy.
As always, Nicole's going to start off this deep dive episode by summarizing what happens in chapters 29 through 34 of ACOWAR. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 29. The lights are dimmed, the candles are burning, and Lucien and Elaine are having an awkward first date. After Feyre tells Rhys mind to mind not to come in and save himself, Elaine shoots up out of her seat. Turns out that after 30 minutes of absolute silence, Lucien tugged on their mating bond, and it felt mighty strange. So Elaine is escorted out by her eldest sister, needing some sunshine. Later that day, Feyre runs into a tree. Where did you come from, tree? Asriel, seeing that Fae-vorite is getting frustrated by her inability to keep up with the Bat Boys, tells her a story about a young seraphim Nephel, or Nephili, depending on what you're listening on, whose wings were too small and malformed to fly. And one day, Miriam and Draken are freeing their people from the Queen of the Blacklands, leading them across the parted sea. Cue the Prince of Egypt music here! But oh no, Miriam is injured and dying and cannot make the trek. So Nephili, defying gravity and the odds, picks up Miriam and flies her to safety. Cause ain't nobody in all of Oz, no wizard that there is or was, could ever bring Nephili down. Feyre, inspired by Elphaba's power ballad and Nephili's story, tries to fly again and is super sore. But who rubs those sore muscles? Rhys baby does, and that massage turns sultry and finger bang, fingerty bang. I said I touched my wing there, Rhys. Bang. Chapter 30. The next morning in...
That's not the right finger bang song, Nicole.
What is the right finger bang song, Lexi?
I want to finger bang bang you into my life, girl.
Chapter 30. The next morning in the dining room, the Archeron sisters are joined by Cassian and Azriel, but Elaine looks up at Cassian and tells him that it won't take more than broken wings and broken bones to kill him. And yes, we will be talking about it, much to Lexi's dismay. Enough of creepy you're gonna die prophecies, to the library! Nesta and Feyre walk towards their chosen reading nook and have a kind of sisterly heart-to-heart, but uh-oh, what's that? It's the King of Hybern's minions, the Ravens, who are coming to get Nesta. Well, not actual ravens. Chapter 31. Feyre grabs Nesta's hand and they run down to the library's mysterious dark depths. But brilliant fucking woman Feyre has an idea. Run away, Nesta! Save yourself! Nesta does, and Feyre keeps running. And finally, when she's not able to see a damn thing, she begins pleading for help, and a presence comes behind her. It's the Mind Flayer, aka Grade A horror show, Bryaxis, who's ready to play Let's Make a Deal. Feyre promises to send someone down to chit-chat with the terrifying creature in exchange for it to murder the raven slowly and terribly. Signed, sealed, deliver, enjoy your meal, Bryaxis. Cassian comes to Feyre's rescue and pulls her away from the screaming bloodbath. Yummy! Chapter 32. While Feyre was playing Let's Make a Deal, Nesta found Cassian and told him what was happening many levels below. Absolutely irate that Hybern infiltrated their city again. Rhys tells the people to prepare for a curfew. But why, Dad? Because there's a wild Amaran on the hunt tonight. Back in the townhouse, after an Inner Circle debrief, Elaine turns to the group and says, well, the Queen might be able to join us too. And after some confused side glances from everyone except for Azriel, our shadow daddy quietly puts two and two together. Elaine is hot. Elaine is a seer. Chapter 33. A name for her power at last. Elaine is like, thank you, and shares about this firebird queen who's being trapped by the evil Lord Kostjay. Ooh, she might be a good ally. So who will go and bring the fiery queen to the cause? Not you, Moore. No, I choose you, Lucian Chu. With a longing glance at Elaine, he decides to leave tomorrow. Chapter 34. Sadly, our wild Amaran hunt came up dry. And what else is dry? Elaine's eyes during Lucian's departure. After a longing gaze, Lucian turns to leave with Rhys just as Elaine takes a step towards her mate. But too late, Lucian is officially headed to the dangers of the continent. But the dangers aren't over yet, friends, because in the dining room, Nesta and Feyre are waiting for Rhys to return from Lucian drop-off when a wild Amaran bursts in. Hybern is laying siege to Adriata of the Summer Court, which we will cover next episode. In Colorado, summer is the perfect time to enjoy the beautiful outdoors, whether it's hiking, pool days, my favorite, or just a walk around the neighborhood. Lexi and I are always on the go, but it's so important to fuel up for this time of year. And there's no better way than with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Factor's menu is full of meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals.
My family is a Factor family. Even my brother-in-law, who it seems every single time that we talk to him on the phone, he's heating up a Factor meal. It's actually become like a running joke. I love it. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week, you'll always have new flavors to explore and try. And we're not talking about those bland microwave dinners you're used to. No. Factor's meals are restaurant quality and feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon.
My stomach actually just started growling as you were saying that. So I'm going to have to bust open a Factor meal after this recording. Head to factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 and use code fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code fantasyfangirl50 at factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active.
All right, it's time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, foreshadowing, theories, and so much more. Let's kick it off with our crew taking Maja's advice and giving Lucien an opportunity to sit with Elaine because, as she said, if anyone can sense if something is amiss, it's a mate. Maja suggested Lucien simply try sitting down with Elaine to see if he can pick up something using the bridge between their souls. But she also reminded him, don't push. This is meant to be baby steps to see how they can help Elaine. So that's exactly what they're doing. Lucien and Elaine are awkwardly sitting in silence while Mor and Feyre hang out nearby, absolutely monitoring them. And in a separate room, Amren is unsuccessfully trying to keep Nesta focused on her training.
I want to start off by saying poor Lucien and Elaine. Rhys and Feyre, back when they were in no way courting, or at least Feyre was in no way courting, Rhys was, they were able to spend time alone together to get to know each other without feeling that there were chaperones breathing down their every single breath. Rhys is like, you had 4 chaperones in this house in this scene. And it's like, no, because they actually gave them space. Now, to be fair, they gave them space because they trusted Rhys and because they trusted Feyre and all this kind of stuff. And they don't necessarily trust Lucien. I still really feel for Lucien and Elaine in this scene. This feels so 1800s Bridgerton to me. It's driving me crazy.
I think it's not so much about not trusting Lucien as it is really focused on Elaine and worrying about her. She is so fragile and she isn't able to, I'll call it, hold her own with Lucien. I don't mean that in a protect yourself against him kind of way, but more like this world, these people, the mating bond, it is all so new and scary, and Elaine is already a shell of herself. So with the state that Elaine is in right now, I don't know if the other's presence would even make that much of a difference, to be honest. But I do think, if anything, it helps put her at ease. Because like we've mentioned, Lucien is pretty much a stranger to her. Her heart belongs to someone else. And Lucien was at fault, at least by association, for this terrible trauma she's endured.
Damn it, you make really good points. Okay, yeah, that's fair. All right, you changed my mind. That's fair. Elaine startles, and both her and Lucien shoot to their feet. Lucien, after 30 minutes of silence, gave a tug on their internal mating bond, which his goal of this interaction was to figure out what is amiss, or at least starting to get clues as to what is amiss with Elaine. So after 30 minutes of silence, and Elaine is clearly not speaking to him, and that's not at fault of her own. She's very lost in her own darkness right now. He's ready to try some different options, like tugging on their mating bond, which Elaine describes as, quote, "It felt strange, like you pulled on a thread tied to a rib." To be quite honest, I do not blame Elaine in the slightest for being like, what the fuck was that, dude? She has no idea what mating bonds are, as we've discussed plentiful on this podcast. And she and Lucien, quite frankly, don't really have a relationship. Like you mentioned, Lex, they are pretty much strangers. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to say mad, but more feeling
disappointed. I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
At Nesta, who is so overprotective of Elaine and also does not understand mating bonds, for storming in and getting angry with Lucien for trying to help.
I agree. And I also understand her perspective based on everything we've already discussed about her disdain for the Fae and this concept of mating bonds. She is just so against it. And he just, I don't want to say activated it because that's not the right word whatsoever, but he just, I'll say, used the mating bond. And she's like, no, we are pretending like this does not exist kind of thing.
Even though literally Maja was like, here's your prescription. It is to mating bond. This is what the prescription is. However, after Lucien does apologize for tugging on this bond, Elaine stares at him for a very long moment, looking aware and lucid for once, which go Lucien and her for bringing this out of her. Now, this could be because he startled her and she like shot to her feet and that activated like a fight or flight, within her. I like to think that it was something with him tugging on their mating bond, and that's what finally brought her back to like having her feet on the ground.
Like it was some feeling in the void that she's been consumed in. And so she does not feel anything. And then all of a sudden she did feel something. And it was kind of like almost like waking her up in that way. Of course, she does fall back into it and she will not really gain that clarity until Azriel realizes that she's a seer. But there is like that reaction that we haven't seen yet from her here.
Which go Lucien for helping her with that. I'm trying
he doesn't get a lot of credit in this episode, so we got to insert it wherever we can.
Now that lucidity does leave rather quickly because she shakes her head and looks to Nesta and says, quote, "Twin ravens are coming, one white and one black. If only they had asked her questions about what this means."
Okay, I got to play devil's advocate because I don't think she would have been able to answer anyway because she doesn't even know.
I disagree entirely because whenever Azriel asks her questions about her seemingly, major air quotes, mutterings, she always goes deeper because he's actually asking her questions about it instead of just being like, "What can I get you, Elaine?" and like brushing it under the rug like it doesn't exist. But no, there are no questions asked. Nesta, hiding her devastation, instead asks, what can she get Elaine? There is a difference between these two questions. Like I mentioned, asking her questions about what she's saying, like what she's, again, major air quotes, muttering, is being curious and not brushing things under the rug like Nesta is doing here. But she asks her what she can get her, and Elaine answers, sunshine. We need to talk about this because I never don't get chills, because she could be saying sunshine, like I need fresh air, just like Lucien was saying last episode that she needs. But what if she was referring to a certain, I don't know, high fae or a court or both associated with sunshine? I'm not talking about Helion. Lucien, only son of the High Lord of Day, because right after this moment where Nesta leads her out after she says sunshine, Feyre looks at Lucien and notices his skin being a darker golden brown than his brother's, aka SJM is wanting us to think about his heritage and his place in the Day Court. If this is a seer moment of Elaine's, this could her absolutely be seeing herself ending up in the Day Court or even ending up with Lucien and her saying, this is what I need ultimately. Now, I'm not saying I'm team Lucien and Elaine. I am a soft shipper of Lucien and Elaine because I do like the idea of where I could see their story going. I'm not married to it, but I'm open to it. But if that is the case, this is brilliant from SJM planting that seed.
I love this possible nod to their mating bond, but again, I'm going to play devil's advocate because Maja said a mate should be able to sense what the other needs. And Lucien may be trying, he really is trying, but he's not very successful as he tries to sense what she needs. And Elaine did slide away from him a few moments before she answers sunshine. You know who does sense that sunshine she needs in the garden? Azriel. On Tumblr, someone named Off to Revendell has made a great point about this, and I'm going to link that Tumblr note in the show notes. While Azriel does, of course, represent darkness, his shadows tend to disappear in Elaine's presence. And of course, we could think of that as like the sunshine makes them completely go away, or we could look at it as these shadows are more so on the spectrum of light and darkness. So they could literally represent sunshine in addition to that shadowy darkness. There is even a line in chapter 45 of ACOWAR that Azriel's, quote, shadows lightened into sunshine. That is actually a line in this book. So could Elaine's reference to sunshine actually be a hint towards her needing Azriel?
I need ACOTAR 6-5, whatever you want to call it, so badly. I need this mystery solved. It is driving me crazy. Those are good points. We'll see.
I'm not in one camp or another. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Well, as Elaine and Nesta leave, Lucien shares with Feyre and Moore that he didn't have time to sense anything, but there is definitely a bond there. Quote, I felt her, but... a blush stained his cheek. Whatever he felt, it wasn't what we were looking for. Where do you think his mind went when that tug was made?
I don't think it was dirty at all.
He blushed. got all cheeky.
Oh, I wonder if it was more of like an embarrassment of this isn't working. Like this isn't like, it's not what he thinks it was. Because I wonder if the mental image of that bridge, connecting them, I'll say like it was almost like a wasteland, reflecting how void she is and how little she feels for him. So the mating bond is there, but it's not there like he imagined it would be for him and his future mate. And there's such a heavy sadness there for him as he doesn't know how to navigate this, and he might be a little bit embarrassed by that too. Or maybe he did feel her seer abilities but didn't know what it was.
I love this idea of the wasteland because, yes, I could definitely see it with her being very void right now. Like when we first saw her in ACOWAR, there was that description of all the sunshine was being let in through the windows because she's so void, she needs to fill it with something else. So I love this idea of like a wasteland because Elaine is someone who does give life back into things. She's a gardener. That is so embedded in her soul. So if it is a wasteland right now, maybe someday,
it'll grow into this beautiful garden. I think that the bridge, or it could potentially be like this beautiful lush garden. And right now, though, I don't think that is it, just because that is not who she is right now.
Like I could see it at some point. This is such a deep cut in Super Mario Odyssey for Nintendo Switch. There's a level where you're like running up a flower like that like appears as you're like walking, and that's exactly how I picture their mind-to-mind bond when they have flowers on it.
The only Mario I've ever played is Super Mario from Nintendo 64, which is still all-time best solo player game ever.
Wow. I cannot agree with you on that, but you know what? I applaud your passion.
All right, friends, who is ready for another flying lesson? Our girl is getting a little better since her first lesson. She's at least taking off now.
Into a tree. She's taking off into trees.
But she's still flying. She couldn't do that on her very first one. So, yeah. I love how she'll ask Az to push her off the cliff, and he's just like, no. That is 100% something that I would ask too. It's like, I just need a little push. But on that note, let's give Azriel a little love. Because like we've mentioned, these lessons are such a good opportunity, not just for Farah to get to know him in a new way, but for us readers too. He is a great instructor who both encourages Farah and doesn't let her use crutches so she can keep pushing herself and learning how to improve. He is straightforward, but also very approachable. Nicole, you asked a few episodes ago who I would choose to train me, and not counting Cassian apparently, because I can't choose him.
No, you cannot.
Reese might be the most fun, but I do think I would learn the fastest with Azriel. There wouldn't be any distractions, and it would be very like focus, which I sometimes need. And I say that in a very positive way about Azriel. Like I would get so distracted with Reese.
I'd get distracted in the best way. I love seeing this side of Azriel. Azriel's personality is so often just drowned out entirely by the bigger personalities in the room of the inner circle. Moore, Cassian, Rhysand, Amren even. They're all these big, boastful personalities, whereas Azriel's very quiet. And that's not a dig. That's just who he is. Azriel is also that like one friend who he is very quiet, but then like he'll say something under his breath that's just like a one-liner that makes you go like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Like, you're so funny. In this scene, Feyre mentions that there are a volley of letters now being exchanged with the High Lords in regards to this meeting. And it dawned on me, we mentioned in our video with Steven, where we interviewed him as Cassian pretending to be Tamlin. Yes, it's exactly as amazing as it sounds. We'll put the link in the show notes. And we were so stumped in this video on how do people communicate in Prythian. This is how. Like, it just did not even like dawn on us. So I'm guessing it's like winnowing, but with letters. So kind of how like Rhys and Feyre did in ACOWAR. However, in ACOWAR, I do want to point out the difference. In ACOWAR, it was Rhys who controlled that because she would sometimes write him letters and it wouldn't vanish. So it would always be his control of the pace in which the winnowed letters happen.
I think that's just because she hadn't tapped into her powers yet, and she will eventually, of course, be able to do that when she just genuinely knows how to.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely. But I just can't believe we forgot about this.
I know. I thought about that as I was watching the YouTube, and it was like, oh, That's obvious. Anyway, that happens sometimes to us. And it's like we kick ourselves, but we just have to let it go. Anyway, Azriel offers some rather sweet vulnerability about how difficult and embarrassing it was for him to try to learn how to fly on his own when he was 11 years old and had just arrived at Windhaven. Remember that he had been in a dungeon for most of his life, locked away because he was the bastard son of an Illyrian lord, and this lord's wife and her sons hated him. But once his father realized he was a shadow singer, he sent him to the Illyrian war camp where Cassian and Rhys happened to be. Illyrians learn how to fly as toddlers. It's simply part of who they are. So it was extra difficult for this poor 11-year-old to have to learn how. But luckily, our Bat Boys Cassian and Rhys taught him how to fly. Because of course they did. Bat Boy brothers for life. But that's not all Azriel shares with Feyre. He gives her an inspirational and true story about a seraphim named Nephel.
Quick note about the name Nephel. There are two different pronunciations of it. It is Nephel or Nephili. Because we always tend to go off the pronunciation of audiobook, just for consistencies, for this episode, we are going to use Nephel, which is how it's pronounced in the audiobook.
Yes. Rhys had brought back this story from his super secret trip to Cretea to see Miriam and Draken a few years after the war 500 years ago. I'm going to be honest, Nicole, I did not realize how frequently Miriam and Draken come up in the series before our deep dive. Like, I knew that they were sprinkled in here and there, but wow, I feel like we're talking about them almost every episode. Anyway, Azriel tells Feyre the story about Nephel, which Rhys had shared with him to help Az feel empowered by his efforts and to help him believe in his own ability to fly. Nephel was a cartographer because she couldn't be in the Legion's fighting ranks. She was too slight and her feathered wings were too small, with one of them somewhat malformed. Nephel had instead become invaluable as a cartographer during the war, helping Draken and her lover, who was one of his generals, find geographical advantages in the battles. During these long months, Nephel and Miriam became dearest friends. So this is how the story goes. Miriam freed her people, the human slaves of the Blackland, ruled by the evil queen who was trying to stop them, and Miriam led all 50,000 of these humans to the shores of the sea. Their only hope was Draken's Legion, who were providing aerial cover, because all of them were gifted with mighty magic of wind and air. Draken's winged seraphim legion made a path through the water so the humans could run to safety and freedom. Doesn't this story sound familiar? Miriam refused to leave a single human behind, and when the Blackland's queen and her army caught up with them, Miriam was skewered by the queen herself. The seraphim's magic was spent holding this water, so Draken ordered the parted sea to come down to drown the enemy force. He did not realize that Miriam had stayed behind and was not safe like the rest of the freed humans. No force could hold the sea back as it barreled down, and the only person who could reach Draken's mate in time was Nephel. Nephel was the only one that figured out Miriam had stayed behind, so she returned for her friend and found Miriam with the queen's spear in her, bleeding out while the water walls came down. Oh no! Refusing to abandon her friend, Nephel picked her up and against all the odds flew. This defied all logic and all training. Nephel wasn't strong enough to even hold a shield, let alone Miriam, who was triple the weight. But she did it. She carried her friend and flew like the best of the seraphim warriors. Had her wings been even 1 inch wider, she would not have been able to fit through the jagged rocks on the sea floor. She outraced death itself, her too small wingspan and deformed wing not failing her once when it mattered most. Miriam is literally alive to this day because of Nephel and her courage, her determination to do the impossible. You go, girl!
Like many moments with Amryn in this series, Miriam and Draken's stories are always packed with immense religious parallels. And this one is quite literally a 1-to-1. Miriam freeing her people from the Queen of the Blackland and their seraphim people whose wings resemble what you imagine would be that of an angel's, and the parting of the sea using the wind and air. This is an ACOWAR retelling of the book of Exodus and the story of Moses parting the Red Sea. The parting of the seas and parting of the water, it also happens 4 other times in the Bible, and it's always by someone who has been blessed or chosen by God or a higher power. Now, it's not just the story of the literal parting of the seas, it's also the names within the Miriam and Draken crew that are absolutely laden with religious parallels. Specifically, their names are very meaningful in Hebrew translations. Miriam, spelled differently, was Moses' sister and means sea of bitterness or sea of sorrow. Given that she almost died on a mission in the sea, this makes a lot of sense. Draken means snake and is considered an emblem of idolatry, which I want to pause real quick because this is really interesting. In biblical terms, idolatry, which I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, means worshiping something more than you worship God. And it's considered a great offense. Not to mention, snake is very concerning. I don't know what this means for our guy Draken. And last but not least, Nephili, which is in the Hebrew pronunciation, Nephili, spelled differently again, means struggling in Hebrew. This feels very appropriate given her struggles with flying.
Since Reese shared this story with Azriel, the Inner Circle has adopted what they call the Nephel philosophy with their own armies. The Nephel philosophy represents what you might think to be your greatest weakness can sometimes be your greatest strength, and that the most unlikely person can alter the course of history. Azriel ends with, quote, "So we'll train Fae-vorite until the last day possible, because we never know if just one extra hour will make the difference."
As Fae-vorite hears this story, something begins to shift back in her, because her and Nephel are very similar. Much like Nephel with the Nephel philosophy, Fae-vorite Cursebreaker has also been the most unlikely person who altered the course of history. Given Reese's emotional connection to the Nephel philosophy, I also wonder if this is what was going through his head under the mountain and what could have been part of. Obviously, we know that there's much more to the story, but I wonder if it's also why he bet on Fae-vorite during the Midgard worm and all of that kind of stuff under the mountain. I think that's such a nice little tie-in. But this story also helps Fae-vorite's struggling flyer tap back into the whatever it takes mindset, that of Fae-vorite Cursebreaker. However, I also want to point out that the most unlikely person to alter the course of history, it can also refer to Elaine here, because I don't know about you, I did not expect her to be the one to stab the King of Hybern, Arya Stark style.
I also love this because it's an empowering story and philosophy that can effectively apply to our own lives as well. Keep pushing because every little bit matters, and your perceived weaknesses can be your greatest strength in the most unlikely scenario. In so many words, never give up. You are capable of great things. You know, Nicole, I've never experienced the stress of flying lessons, unfortunately, but that's not to say there aren't enough stressful other things in my life. And that's why there is Rituals Stress Relief to save the day. Rituals Stress Relief helps me manage my stress ever since I integrated it into my morning routine.
This product uses first-of-its-kind technology to support the body's natural cortisol response so you can take on the daily juggle. Rituals Stress Relief is so easy to use, and I know that when I use it, I am starting my day off right. I know that I'll be setting myself up for stress-free success for the entire day.
Stress Relief BioSeries technology is designed to optimize the release of a trio of clinically studied ingredients to help the body manage stress. Ritual suggests taking Stress Relief in the morning when cortisol is typically at its peak to support the body's natural cortisol response with an instant and extended release formula for all-day support.
Don't just respond to stress. Get ahead of it with Stress Relief from Ritual. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/FFG. Start Ritual and add Stress Relief to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/FFG for 25% off. After a long day of flying and running into trees, Fae-vorite is spent. Coming upstairs to her bedroom, Reese wordlessly turns on the bath for her, and noticing that Fae-vorite has no energy to even walk towards said bath, he scoops her up and lowers her into the hot water, then leaves to grab a salve, which he returns and gives her a massage to ease her aching muscles. And before this turns into a more rated R moment, I just have to say I love how sweet this scene is. I have a very difficult time asking for help, and most instances where I'm sick or where I am tired, I have to muster up a lot of confidence in order to ask Brett for assistance. And it's nothing against him. He can sometimes look at me and he's take a look at
He's the most what do you need?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and he'll sometimes look at my stubborn ass and not I won't ask for help. And he'll grab me a glass of water without me having to ask, or he'll rub my neck or something like that. And maybe this is just my acts of service love language talking, but it's just little reminders of that, of appreciation that are so tiny and taking care of each other. It just, that always just oh, it's so romantic. I love it. But you know what else is romantic? Wing play.
I love this unique anatomy intimacy. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but you know what I mean.
Who needs a vibrator when you have wings? Rhys's touches turned exploratory on her body, ending up with his mouth between her legs and that one finger stroking that one spot on her wing. That is one way to relax your muscles after a long day of flying.
Can I just say how clever the wording is with her climax? Quote, sending me soaring out of my body. Get it? Because she's got wings?
You just want wings, Lexi.
It's so sweet also how they just want more time together. Since they basked in their mating bond, aka Chapter 55 of ACOWAR, these two lovebirds haven't really had that much time together to truly be together. Sure, there's been moments here and there that we all love, but the fate of the world is kind of weighing on their shoulders, and there is always somewhere to be, plans to make, lose-lose situations to choose from. My heart feels for them just wanting the simple things in life, spending quiet, undisturbed time together. That's the future that they're hoping for and that they're fighting for, to simply be able to be together and be two people blissfully in love.
The next day, we are in the townhouse in the dining room with the Archeron sisters eating breakfast when the two Illyrians, full-blooded Illyrians, I should say, walk in. Cassian reaches over Nesta to grab a blueberry muffin and then says through chews, like, good morning, blah, 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 while Asriel bows, good morning. Like, these are just night and day, boys, night and day. But Elaine turns to Cassian and says something rather interesting. Quote, he snapped your wings, broke your bones. That is one way to say good morning, Elaine, which causes everyone to halt, plagued by the memories of that day in Hybern in the last part of ACOWAR. But his wings at this point were shredded and not broken. So I believe she's actually talking about the future battle where it definitely matches his exact injuries that he receives at Hybern's hands. Cassian laughs it off, though, saying that it will take much more than that to kill him, to which Elaine says, quote, no, it will not. It's time to talk about it.
No!
Lexi, plug your ears.
No!
Because of this line, many readers believe that it is a possibility that Cassian might die in a future book. Because we do know that we are getting 2 more ACOTAR full books and 1 more novella.
Yay for Amryn and her love for sports. I'm going for that short story.
I desperately need raging Sunball fan Amryn. Desperately. Now, this is more than just this one line from Elaine. Cassian is so linked to death throughout this entire series, mentioning how it doesn't scare him, even he is mated to someone with the power of death. We also still have no idea how the issue with Kosjay is going to be resolved, which it could very likely end up in some big battle where Elaine's prophecy comes true.
No, stop talking about this.
Because everything thus far Elaine has said has come true, minus Cassian's death. We know that Nesta's story arc is not done, which to me means that we're most likely going to get more Cassian POV. So he's not done being a main character, is what I'm saying.
I will say yes to that. That does brighten my spirits, that possibility.
I'm about to brighten your spirits even more.
Okay.
Because personally, I believe that Elaine saying this to Cassian is actually just foreshadowing the end of this book, ACOWAR. Firstly, because the injuries she's describing are a 1-to-1 comparison with the injuries that he receives at the final battle by Hybern.
So I did look into this, and yes, his wings are snapped in spots with blood leaking from them, bone jutting out from his thighs here in this final battle in ACOWAR. Other bones are described as snapping. His whole body is broken. The king, quote, brought his foot down upon Cassian's nearest wing. Bone snapped, and his scream, okay, wait, this is the exact description that Elaine gives. He, the king, literally snapped Cassian's wing and broke his bones.
So the second reason I believe that this is just foreshadowing the end of this book is because I think that Elaine foresaw this happening to Cassian through her seer power here. and she knew she could change fate. He and Nesta are literally seconds from dying at Hybern's hands until Elaine comes in, shocking all of us and stabbing Hybern through the neck. So I love the idea that Elaine actually chooses to change fate and stop this prophecy from coming true. You might be thinking, well, why does she say to Cassian and not Nesta here, given that they're both about to be killed by the King of Hybern? I wonder if she's not able to see Nesta's involvement because of Nesta's connection to the Cauldron. It's almost like because Nesta is made, it's a blind spot for Elaine's seer power.
I love that. Yes to all of that. I'm going to hold on to that. The scene where Cassian is supposed to die from the king breaking his body and wings I really do think that is what Elaine is seeing right here. And she is the only one who is able to change fate. Yep. To me, this is canon. I feel a lot better now. Thank you.
Like literally, I think she was in that moment where she sees Hybern looking down on Nesta and Cassian and she's like, oh my God, this is my vision. And she stops it. Like, which I love that. Like Elaine taking fate by the balls and changing it. I love it. There are several reasons, though, why I truly, in my heart and soul, do not believe that Cassian is going to die in a future book. Let me just ease your anxiety.
Thank you. It's also like, is one of the reasons because your sister would never, ever get over it, and I would refuse to do a deep dive on that.
It wasn't until now. It is now. First and foremost, other than that reason, we just got an 800-page book about Nesta and him falling in love. Nesta worked through so much trauma in Silver Flames, and from a storytelling perspective, if Cassian dies in a future book, it would absolutely break her. I don't see us going through another Nesta trauma book, quite frankly. So if Cassian were to have died, I do believe it would have been at the end of ACOWAR and thus would have been part of her healing journey in Silver Flames. And then lastly here is that this is SJM. She is a romance writer. She tends to write happy endings pretty consistently. Cassian is also considered a main character now. He is no longer a side character. We've been in his POV for literally an 800-page book. If ACOTAR has taught us anything, it's that main characters do tend to stay pretty fucking safe. Or at least if they do die, it does not last long. So quite frankly, Cassian's fine. This was entirely just foreshadowing to the end of this book. Does that make you feel better, Lexi?
It really does make me feel better, and it better be fucking right. That's all I'll say.
Mercifully, though, Feyre comes in with a subject change. She's like, Elaine, do you want to go check out those herbs that you've planted outside in the garden? To which Azriel steps in to escort her. Quote, no shadows in his ears, no darkness ringing from his fingers as he extended a hand. I'm consistently going back and forth on whether or not a lack of Azriel's shadows being present is a good thing or a bad thing. And I don't know if it's that black and white, quite frankly. It might also just be him in this moment wanting to make her more comfortable and not wanting little slivers of shadows rolling up her side. But I'm on shadow watch now is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think that it goes right back to what I was saying earlier, where the shadows recognize the sunlight that Elaine needs and they disappear or they transform into light. And of course, them making the shadows also disappear. The shadows being gone is a nod to the goodness between them. And I think that it's a very much a representation of what she needs and them kind of disappearing and providing that sunlight there.
I'm going to build on that. If Elaine herself is representing of sunlight would drain away the shadows.
Exactly.
That is very poetic for our dude Azriel.
And it would be in a good way, not in a shadows leaving Azriel and therefore some of his identity disappearing. I don't think of it like that at all. The shadows are very much part of Azriel. They are like his friends, And I love when we do get his POV in the bonus chapter, we do get a little nod to the shadows and his occult relationship. And so I could also see that they are responding here to the goodness in Elaine and really reflecting that.
I'm not going to go too much into this because we have the entirety of Silver Flames, but there is that moment in the bonus chapter of Silver Flames when he's with Gwen and the shadows almost dance and sing in her presence.
Yes.
So that dichotomy is very interesting, and yes, we will be tracking it. But we're on Azriel and Elaine right now because with them in the garden, Cassian finishing up his muffin, he's licking his fingers, and Nesta's tracking every single movement of it, which But it's time to head up to the House of Wind and the library.
Nesta and Feyre are in the library to continue researching any and all information about repairing the wall. Nesta hasn't found anything yet from her own search in Rhys's home library, and since she hasn't been shown the library below the House of Wind, Feyre volunteers to take her there. As these two sisters wander the quiet rows of books in the lower levels, they share a vulnerable exchange, which I love that this library, seemingly so detached from the outside world, helps both of them talk more openly to one another. It's like this safe space to be able to let down their guards that they desperately need to let down with one another. Nesta says she doesn't know how her magic works, about how it lets her know what to look for in regard to the wall. And Feyre realizes that this magic probably frightens Nesta, bringing us back to that theme of Nesta needing control and understanding. And she doesn't have that as a Fae in this new and foreign world and body, which makes her shut the others out because she doesn't know how to talk about this power. And because she doesn't know how, she doesn't want to reveal that vulnerability and lack of control. Even if they are in this safe space in this library, Feyre doesn't know how to ask her sister if she's all right. She doesn't know how to comfort Nesta because this is such new territory for both of them. She wants to try, but a whole life of tension and walls up make that so hard to even know how to approach assuring her sister that she's there for her. So instead, Feyre tells her sister about the priestesses and her and Rhys's plans to offer sanctuary to any humans who could make it to Velaris. It's a different kind of olive branch she's extending to Nesta. She's offering information and plans from the High Lord and Lady, letting Nesta in on what's going on, helping her understand this place to provide her comfort and knowledge, which is something that Nesta needs. Nesta eventually admits that she didn't know Feyre couldn't read, and she assumed her little sister could just as easily as she and Elaine. It absolutely doesn't excuse Nesta and even Elaine how they made that big assumption. But let's look at it from their perspective. Nesta and Elaine were young teenagers who were equally struggling with their entire world getting turned upside down and thrown into poverty. They had better educations than Feyre, and while it shows a lack of awareness of their younger sister, we can gather they weren't very attentive and involved older sisters even before poverty. After they fell into poverty, checking in to see if their little sister had an adequate education just wouldn't be high on the priority list. I'm going to be honest, it probably wouldn't have been high on my priority list either after everything that just happened to them. Where I will fault, especially Nesta, is her superiority to not let Feyre attend the local school because she felt like they were above that. She took that choice and that possibility away from Feyre, and that is why she was not able to continue any kind of education whatsoever.
Well, and this is also a good reminder for us as readers that perspective matters depending on whose story you're reading. We are always in Feyre's POV until we get to Silver Flames. And because we're in Feyre's POV, we are going to look at everything through her perspective. But what I love about this conversation is it starts to open up that scope for us as readers and Feyre as a character as well.
Well, and even here, Feyre says she doubted Nesta would agree to help even if she did know that she couldn't read. Quote, Nesta stiffened like I'd hit her, coldness blooming in those eyes. Knowing what we do about Nesta's POV from Silver Flames, I believe this is a moment where she realizes her default actions and behavior led her sister to make this assumption. And in Nesta's mind, she can think all she wants that it isn't true. But then it dawns on her that yeah, that assumption makes sense because she hadn't shown her little sister any alternative. And then there's that guilt and self-loathing that she did that. So right now she's reinforcing her walls of solitude, and the cycle Nesta is stuck in continues. But the vulnerable discussions don't stop there. In this safe space detached from the rest of the world, Feyre finally asks her sister a question that has been gnawing at her for years and years. Quote, why do you push everyone away but Elaine? However, the real question she's asking is, why have you always pushed me away? That's a fair question. Nesta has two younger sisters. Why has she only ever seemingly cared about one? I can only imagine the heartbreak Feyre has endured seeing how Nesta treats Elaine versus her, and it has festered in their relationship, driving a wedge between these two sisters. While Nesta doesn't get a chance to respond right here, quote, some emotion guttered in her eyes, her throat bobbed. Nesta shut her eyes for a moment, breathing in sharply. Because
I literally wrote in my notes, God fucking damn it, interruptions. I'm sorry.
While I really wish I knew what Nesta was going to say, I'd like to maybe speculate here. For one, and actually this is not what I think Nesta was going to say, but it is definitely relevant. Nesta was their mother's protege, and their mother didn't care about Feyre. She was viewed as this weird kid, and her mother mostly ignored her youngest daughter. Nesta saw this growing up and replicated these feelings because she was being groomed by their mother. So I think that is how it subconsciously started for Nesta and her relationship with her youngest sister. Second, and this is probably a more drawn out version of what Nesta was going to say, she was so jealous of how Feyre had the courage to take care of their family. Even when their father was being beaten by the debt collectors, all Nesta cared about was what they might do to her and Elaine. And to this day, she's ashamed that was all she cared about. Meanwhile, it was Feyre who was the one trying to protect their father. This continued when they were in poverty. Feyre was the one who provided, and Nesta willingly fell into this weaponized incompetence. She turned her jealousy and guilt into this hardened coldness, and it became part of who she is.
She even admits in Silver Flames that she didn't take any action. She didn't do anything because she was waiting for her father to step up.
Yes.
And so I wonder if this is also included in that. Like, I mean, she didn't know that Feyre was illiterate by any means, but that also is a huge reason as to why Feyre assumed she wouldn't do anything about it, because Nesta was so angry and so mad and just so desperately wanting her father to do something that she sat back and let her sister take care of everything. Oh, I can't wait to talk about that in a lot. But we don't have time right now because the world stops and shifts. The Fae lights above them start to sputter out and die one by one. Feyre only has one thought eddying through her head: run. Grabbing Nesta by the elbows, Feyre looks above at the darkness chasing them down, 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 and right as Feyre thinks about winnowing her and Nesta out of there, the darkness behind them pauses, and two figures step out of the inky black. And oh my God, during my reread of this chapter, I was in bed, I was listening to the audiobook, my heart racing, even though I've read this book 45,000 times, but I also can't help but think of how cozy and comfy I am because I know I was snug as a bug in my Miracle Made sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long.
These sheets are infused with silver that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odor, folks. And Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and they feel nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels.
Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or a gift for a loved one, you can order them today and save over 40%. And if you use promo code FF at checkout, you will get 3 free towels and save an extra 20% off. Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that is trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. Thank you so much, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
The twin ravens from Elaine's visions have arrived. Uh-oh. Who are these ravens, you might ask? Well, they are 2 high fae males from Hybern. Dun dun dun. Because they are able to infiltrate the priestess's minds, I initially wondered if at least one of them is Daemati. But then when Feyre's powers are nullified by the Faebane, they don't do any kind of mind speak or control, so perhaps this was a separate power they used on the unsuspecting priestess. I don't know. Anyway, one of these assholes is dark-haired, the other has light hair. They both have the Hybern dead eyes and gray jackets with Hybern's signature bone white thread. Why are they called ravens? They are the king's, quote, far-flying eyes and talons. There's even a description that he's like raking his talons like along the wall. So I'm assuming they just don't cut their nails. I'm not exactly sure. Or maybe they are actually talons. Anyway, all of this to say, I'm guessing these ravens are the King of Hybern's traveling doers of dirty work. And they're here to take Nesta back to the King of Hybern. But first, they blow Faebane powder into these ladies' faces to immediately nullify their magic. So Feyre can't reach Rhys right now or use any of her other abilities, like winnowing.
But how did these douche canoes get in, you ask? After Hybern used a mighty spell that is only able to be wielded once, but is capable of cleaving wards open, which, I'm sorry, I need a pause right now. I am so surprised that he used this one-hit wonder and only sent in 2 people. That feels like a very missed opportunity. But anyway, after this one-trick wonder, the 2 ravens were able to enter Valaris and got into the minds of the priestess and were let into the library, making the priestess believe that they were scholars. Again, pause. This is so sad because of what the library is for these priestesses. After such horror and trauma, this is supposed to be the #1 safe place and comfortable place for them. And while Rhys feels so guilty later, it breaks my heart. And even though him and Moore even sit with the priestesses for a long time after this infiltration, it is not Rhys's fault that they got into the library. Of course, he's taken the blame for everything. But why are the ravens here in the first place? After Nesta went into the cauldron and left with a bit of its power, more than a bit, I guess, the cauldron has not been at its full strength. We assumed earlier in this book that it was not at full strength because it turned her sister's high fae. However, we're learning that it's not that. It's because Nesta stole too much power from it. Badass. And Hybern, he's pretty pissed about it.
To be honest, I would be too. Imagine how much time and effort the king has put into finding and obtaining the cauldron. Then right before he's able to really use it for what he intended, someone steals from it and now it can't be used the way that he needs.
Did you just sympathize with the king of
I did
Hybern?
not sympathize. I did not sympathize. I simply said that I can understand why he really is upset and wants Nesta.
That's a choice, Lexi.
I don't mean it in that way. Please, to be clear, I am not sympathizing with him. I am simply expressing I would also be pissed if I was an evil leader.
I just learned something new about you. So the ravens were sent on a mission to take Nesta back to the king of Hybern so that she could give the power back, so he could kill her in the cauldron and then give the power back, so he could do some magical spellness and the cauldron would take it back.
So my understanding is that he doesn't want to quickly kill her, but almost experiment with her and all of the power that she has. Nesta is so unique and so powerful, and I'm sure he wants to see what he can wield with that power in a Fae, and somehow use her and the cauldron with their combined power to make the cauldron at full strength.
You are really thinking like the king of Hybern.
That is what we do in our deep dives, is we put ourselves in other people's shoes, even when we don't like them. I mean, we have done that with Tamlin. We have done that with plenty of other people. We even did that with Amarantha. Of course, we're going to do it with the King of Hybern. I guess I'm going to do it with the King of Hybern. I will fall on that sword. Well, don't come at me in the comments, please.
This is all so that the King of Hybern and apparently Lexi can take down the wall for good. However, Feyre knows her and Nesta are in some deep shit, so she looks at her choices. First, she could take on the ravens in hand-to-hand with only a knife, while each of them have 2 swords and are built. They're swole. So she understands that they are trained to use them as well. Feyre's a very smart warrior, and smart warriors know when they're outmatched. She is outmatched. Number 1, off the table. Option number 2, run like hell out of here and try to get out of the library and risk further traumatizing the priestesses and risk bringing these horrible raven people closer to the citizens of Valaris. It is Feyre Cursebreaker. She would never risk innocence like that.
Unless they're in the spring court.
Who are you this episode? Option 2 is off the table. Last but not least, door number 3 is haul Nesta with her towards a spiraling pit of darkness that contains a creature so terrifying that even the Lord of Bloodshed does not speak of its horrors. But where she also knows that she has the advantage-ish of at least that there is a big, scary, terrible monster down there, while the ravens do not know that there is a big, scary, terrible monster down there. Door number 3 it is! Plus, I'll also note that Feyre knows it's very likely that help will come soon, considering the priestesses have to know that something very wrong is happening. The lights are shutting off, yada, yada. She will learn later, however, that there is a spelled bell inside the library that Clotho rang, and it alerted the members of the Inner Circle to the danger.
You know, all I can think about is some kind of inner mind, intruder alert, intruder alert, intruder alert.
Please, for the love of God, someone clip that noise only. And do something with it. You have my full permission. So down and down and down they go, the light winking out entirely, and Feyre needing to keep a hand against the wall to stay rooted. But as they run, apparently these twins are the masters of all things cardio, because while Nesta is panting and Feyre is dead focused on getting into that dark pit and also panting, the Ravens give an evil villain download, which honestly is impressive. I'm going to get in the mind of an evil villain for a second, because you know what? Dad and I used to go on runs together, and despite him being at the time in his late 60s, early 70s, he would be able to carry on conversations like nobody's business, and I would be dying.
Same thing when I go on runs with Jake. He will carry on a whole conversation and I will just be huffing and puffing while he hasn't even broken a sweat.
It turns out that it's not just the King of Hybern that wants Nesta Archeron. The youngest queen also has it out for this eldest Archeron sister. After they left Hybern at the end of last book, the queens started prepping to go into the Cauldron themselves, and the youngest queen practically trampling over the others to get into the giant cookware to be turned high fae. But the Cauldron was not happy that something was taken away from it by Nesta. So in its anger, it took something from the queen who went in first. And what did it take? What she valued most, her youth. So she came out of the Cauldron an old crone. And this gets Feyre thinking about Elaine's previous, again, air quotes, mutterings. Quote, I saw young hands wither with age, and, quote, twin ravens are coming. Holy goodness! It looks like it was not madness after all, but we're running for our lives, so we will have to put a pin in that for now. At the bottom of the library pit and in the absolute inky darkness, Feyre sees a trickle of light in the center coming from above. Knowing the ravens are hot on their tail, she begs Nesta to run towards the light while Feyre holds them off. Feyre does this for many reasons, namely because she doesn't want her sister to see what she's about to lure the ravens to, and because she knows that Nesta is who they want in the first place. Nesta attempted to cross the wall for her back in ACOWAR, so this is also her taking a similar rescue action, that brave rescue action that Nesta did back then. And of course, it's Feyre Cursebreaker. This is part of her self-sacrificing nature.
It's like she's able to save her sister now when she wasn't able to back in Hybern, and that really ate her alive. And of course, she's going to save her sister. Like, we do not need to list the reasons. It's her sister.
It's and
sister. There are also other elements at play here too, always.
Very true. Nesta protests for just a moment, but then she squeezes Feyre's hand and bolts towards the light. I love that little moment where she squeezes her hand. Taking the opportunity to distract the ravens further, Feyre knocks over a bookshelf, and like the domino effect, it falls, bringing the others down with it and blocking off Nesta's exit after she's gone, and also blocking off Feyre's exit. So she is trapped with the ravens.
Later, we will get Cassian's POV of Nesta's escape. She is running and stumbling up the stairs from the darkness, and he can taste her fear. Nesta makes a small sound like a wounded stag when she finds him, launching herself toward him. Oh, Cassian! With her arms stretched out. She didn't actually say that. That's just me. She might seem like she hates his company, but him coming to their rescue and her absolute relief at seeing Cassian of all people is just one more nod that deep down she is pulled toward him. But wasting no time, Nesta rasps Feyre and Hybern so he can go help her sister trapped at the bottom of the library with the ravens. Nesta might come off as a bitch. She definitely comes off as a bitch, let's be honest. But of course, she's so fearful for her sister and wants her to be saved after she just sacrificed herself for Nesta's escape.
Feyre continues moving through this lowest level, and in, again, pitch blackness, she's running into the shelves, and if the grunts from the ravens behind her are any clue, they're probably doing the same thing. But she finally comes to a stop, quieting her breath, and Feyre begins to beg into the void. Then, boom, a shudder through the ancient floor. Bryaxis in the house!
I love that it isn't until the ravens say that she's the High Lady that's when Bryaxis is like, ooh, maybe I do want to play. This is interesting. Because before the ravens mentioned who she was, Feyre was begging for help and Bryaxis didn't answer. And Feyre is a little bit like, come on, I know you're down here. Like, where are you?
Even though Feyre senses no body or physical presence around her, she feels this mass lurking all around her, quote, like a shroud. proud. Later in battle, Feyre will describe Bryaxis as living nests of shadows. So basically, it technically does not have a body. While we don't know a whole lot about this terrifying creature of nightmares, we do know that it's ready to play. Let's make a deal. When Bryaxis asks, quote, "What shall you give me in return for its help?" Feyre thinks about how she remembers from Alice's warning before Under the Mountain to never make a bargain. Looks like that onboarding from Lisa from marketing really stuck with her. However, Feyre thinks about the bargains that she has made, specifically the one Under the Mountain that saved her life and also brought her to Rhys. So she's like, maybe bargains are actually okay. I will actually say, though, Rhys is not Bryaxis, in case Feyre didn't know. So she says, "What do you want?" And quote, "The stone and wind hear all, speak all. They whisper to me of your desire to wield the carver, to trade." There is that language again about the elements communicating the world's secrets. God, I love it. We learned that Bryaxis knew the bone carver long ago. Quote, "Before many things walked this earth." Lexi, not to do this to you.
Oh, no.
But do you think Bryaxis could also be an old god similar to like Lanthus, for instance, which in that case, would it make Bryaxis a possible Daglin as well? If we think that the old gods are possibly Daglin.
Yes to Bryaxis being a very different type of death god, but no to Daglin. I don't think that we can put any of these creatures in a box, so to speak. They are all very unique, very different. And so just to put them all in one box, it doesn't really work that way. But in the context of this, yes, I do think that Bryaxis could be considered a death god. Would it be an old god like who the ancient Fae worshipped? I don't think so at all. But I do think about that language of the Daglin's monsters and things like that. So again, I don't think that the Daglin and death gods were the same, but these old gods, death gods, however you want to call them. So I could see Bryaxis long ago being one of the Daglin's monsters that we have heard a lot about. Similar to Lanthus, certainly.
I think I need to go back and listen to episode 4 again. This is what this is teaching me. So Feyre asks again what it wants, and it says, quote, "Company, send me company." Oh no, Feyre darling, it's not to eat, but instead to tell Bryaxis of life. I can't help but think about the bone carver and how whenever we do visit him, he's always asking questions about death or about life outside in this world. And this feels so similar to me, but instead, Bryaxis, instead of wanting to know about death, like the carver, Bryaxis wants to know about life. However, that. I know, me too, right? And especially because it's Bryaxis, it's this living demon shadow. And it's like, can someone just tell me about flowers, please? Like, that'd be great.
Well, let's send Tamlin down there.
What if? Crack theory.
Oh, goodness.
Crack theory. We know that Bryaxis is off in the world somewhere at the end of ACOWAR in Silver Flames. We don't know where it is. What if Tamlin finally found a friend? And it's Bryaxis. They're chilling in the spring court together, and he finally at least got the friend that he deserves.
I love it. I love it.
I think Bryaxis deserves better. Anyway, Bryaxis doesn't specify who for company or when the company is sent. Rhys actually later will joke that for any, inner circle punishment going forward, it's going to be go down and speak to Bryaxis for an hour.
My poor Cassian. My poor Cassian.
Maybe he's got to face the fear. Maybe he's got to face it a few times to overcome it. like immersive therapy. I'm not.
He tries to do this time around. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second.
I do have to say though, as weird as it sounds, I am very happy for this absolute horror show that I just said should be friends with Tamlin at the end of this book. Because later we will learn that all it wants is just a window. It just wants to see the flowers outside. And we'll learn at the end of this book that, like I said, it's roaming around somewhere. No one knows where it is, which, pause, this will probably be a plot point in a future book. And I wonder if maybe Asriel, like maybe one of his storylines will lead him to Bryaxis, because Bryaxis is a living nest of shadow. So maybe Asriel will be able to connect with it more. I don't know.
Maybe.
Crack theory number 2. So technically, with it being out in the world, it definitely got much better than a window. It can finally feel the sun on its face. It can smell the lilacs in the field. The bargain, however, in this moment is good enough for Feyre. So with a prickle along her left arm, which yes, that skin is where her previous Under the Mountain bargain tattoo with Rhys was, but when it got ripped away from Hybern, she has a clear left arm now. Not anymore, because now she has her Bryaxis deal. The deal is sealed, and just in time, because the ravens conjure Faelight just as their attention goes from Feyre to up and up and up and up, and then their eyes fill with absolute terror at what stands behind the High Lady. Personally, I can only picture the giant thing from Stranger Things, the Mind Flayer, that thing that's like this in the upside down. Then, quote, high-pitched shrieking and pleading, bones snapping, blood splattering like rain, cloth ripping, screaming, and then warm hands drag Feyre away.
It's Cassian to the rescue! He and Rhys ran down the stairs after their encounter with Nesta, running up and telling them she and Hybern are down there. While Rhys takes care of the Hybern ravens, Cassian drags Feyre away, warning her not to look at Bryaxis at the scene playing out in front of them. When Rhys arrives, he does close his eyes and doesn't open them until Bryaxis leaves what's left of the ravens for him. So luckily, Rhys did not see the monster, but moments before he landed on the floor of the pit and shook the entire mountain, Cassian did see, as he made sure to spare Feyre from looking. My poor Cassian now has witnessed this horrific monster twice. He faced his fear and raced down into danger again to save his High Lady, because of course he would. Like, there's no question about it. Of course he would do that. Cassian will later say that yes, the second encounter isn't quite so harrowing as his first, even though he'll still be super pale and barely speaking. As he says, quote, it wasn't trying to eat me this time. Can we marvel for a second at how Cassian escaped Bryaxis the first time when it apparently tried to attack him like it did to the ravens? He is so badass. I love it. Even if it haunts his nightmares for the next 200 years. Back to the horror show, because knowing Feyre would still look, Rhys shields the sight with his darkness. These two bat boys are determined to protect her from this terrifying scene. Rhys beats the barely alive ravens to a pummel, not even shielding his hands so he can feel the destructions in his hands, and he extracts the necessary information from their minds before sloppily killing them. Meanwhile, Cassian ushers Feyre away to get back to Nesta up the stairs. Then they launch skyward to get the hell out of here. Phew! They're saved! Ha! Take that, Hybern. But even though our crew swiftly took care of the Hybern ravens, the fact remains that the King of Hybern was able to break through Valaris' wards. Again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. At least that's how Rhys is feeling right now. When Hybern attacked Valaris last book, thanks to the Mortal Queens ratting them out, Rhys was stricken with terrible guilt that he sold out the secret of his city and placed his trust in the wrong people. But this time, his guilt and anger at himself have a different tune, because last time they were taken by complete surprise. Insert me mentioning how they should have been on high alert after sharing their secret with the Mortal Queens no matter what. But anyway, this time, however, Rhys knew what Hybern was capable of, and Hybern snuck in anyway, using a fleeting spell of mighty power capable of cleaving wards, like Valaris's. Rhys guesses the king must have been biding his time until he really needed this particular spell. And sure enough, retrieving the power, aka Nesta, who is the only one who can restore the cauldron back to full strength so he can, continue on his mission, counts as dire enough to use this precious spell. In doing so, though, the king showed his hand, not only with the information gleaned from the ravens, but also he proved that he desperately needs the cauldron at full power in order to truly think he can win this war. Without the full might of the cauldron, without Nesta, he has a sliver of doubt of his conquest. I also have to wonder if his reasoning included thinking he wouldn't need the spell once he did have the full strength of the cauldron again. So it was like, okay, I use this one-time powerful spell to get the most important thing that can then help me cleave more wards more times. I get it. Yes, Nicole?
If he was using a one-hit wonder spell, one-time use only, why did he send only 2 people into the place where he needed the thing that he needs absolute most?
I agree with you, but again, putting my Hybern cap on, I'm pretty sure it was stealthness, right? Like he wanted this to be kind of super sneaky. He didn't want to show his hand the way that he ended up showing it. And so he wanted to just take Nesta. I also think that he just really underestimated who would be with Nesta, whether that's underestimating Nesta herself, which he definitely will be doing as well, but also knowing that she was in the library. Again, I don't know how, just the magic, I suppose. And knowing that it was the priestesses. So yeah, I think that he just underestimated all around. But back to Rhys's reaction to the second infiltration. Was this time less destructive of the city? Yes. Only the ravens showed up to the library and no one was killed. Good, except for them, but they don't count. Good. But it had to be the library, the sacred place for these priestesses who have experienced enough trauma in their life. The guilt of not protecting them and their safe place eats at Rhys. He respects these priestesses and has done everything he can to provide a sanctuary for them so they can begin their own healing and find peace. Hybern shattered that today, and because he wasn't able to stop it, Rhys feels he failed the priestesses. Not to mention, his mate was put in great danger and had to make a bonded bargain with a monster. When Feyre asks mind to mind, what's wrong? Which, I'm sorry, but Feyre, your naiveness is showing. Like, Rhys sums it up so well. What's wrong is that these pieces of shit got into my house and attacked my mate. What's wrong is that my own damn wards worked against me, and you had to make a bargain with that thing to keep yourself from being taken. He's obviously not mad at his mate. He's understandably worked up and going through some big emotions. I love the writing of how Feyre responds quietly but not weakly. Just because her tone is soft does not mean that she is cowering to him. Remember how earlier in this episode we were talking about how stressed Feyre must be from flying lessons? Well, I don't understand how after she almost got killed by assassins, she's not having breakouts. Must be that Fae magic, right?
When life is a lot, one of the first signs I notice is my face breaks out in acne. And acne can honestly have a real big impact on my self-confidence. And that's why we are so excited to partner with Apostrophe, the sponsor of this episode. Apostrophe's goal is to help make you feel confident in your own skin. Whether you're dealing with breakouts, sign of aging, or acne scarring, Apostrophe will help you love the skin you're in.
Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get customized acne treatment for your unique skin. Through Apostrophe, you can get access to oral and topical medications that use clinically proven ingredients to help clear acne. Simply fill out an online consultation about your skin goals and medical history. For me, I love a really good user experience. Apostrophe, oh my gosh, beautiful user experience. I loved it. Then you snap a few selfies and a dermatology provider will create a customized treatment plan just for you.
So about a year ago, for the first time in my life, I started getting back acne. I've always gotten it on my face, but then my back was like, let's join the party. And for 6 months, I've been using Apostrophe. My back is clear. It looks so beautiful. I love it. It makes me so happy. And I have to echo what you said about user experience. It feels like such a breeze with Apostrophe. Cannot speak highly enough about them.
And with that said, we have a special deal for our audience. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/FF when you use our code FF. That's a savings of $15. This code is only available to our lovely listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/FF and click Get Started. Then use our code FF at sign up and you'll get your first visit for only $5. Thank you so much, Apostrophe, for sponsoring this episode.
With the threat gone from the Ravens, Amren spends some time adapting the new wards against these one-time, one-hit wonder spells, which why wasn't it already warded against these types of spells anyway? Valaris may not be notified why, but the people of the city are warned to stay indoors. No children on the streets. The palaces are not allowed to be open past moonrise. For what, you ask? Amren on the hunt. That night, Amren will sweep through all of Valaris looking for any lingering signs of Hybern, which she will find none. But some of the citizens paint on their threshold lamb's blood, and even some leave out a cup of blood for her on their doorstep as payment to stay away. So I guess I'm starting religion watch on the podcast. This is yet another moment from the story of Moses. When the angel of death, which SJM has compared Amram to, sweeps through the city, the Hebrews paint their doorways in lamb's blood to keep the angel away from taking their firstborn and to keep it away from giving the plague to their household.
Rhys will go on to strategize that this attack stays hush-hush. The priestesses won't tell anyone, and the people of the city won't know why Amram is hunting for enemies. The Inner Circle can't afford to let the other High Lords find out about this because it would make Velaris and its High Lord look even more vulnerable. The Night Court is working toward building the other courts' trust and optimism that they have a chance against Hybern. And if Hybern attacks the people who are trying to rally the rest of Prythian to their cause, it will make them look weak and not a reliable ally. Honestly, I get it. I really do. There are such tensions with the other courts already, and recruiting allies is so unknown that the Night Court can't risk any hiccups in the days leading up to this crucial High Lord meeting. I just really feel for Rhys. I gave him a hard time about the Velaris attack last time and sharing the secret with the Mortal Queens. Yes, even if it seemed like it might be a good idea in the moment for him when his back was against the wall, but the king here used a powerful spell that Rhys couldn't have foreseen. Yes, he kicked himself for not remembering the spellbook, but I'm going to argue in his defense that it's hard to prepare for every single spell in an unholy and ancient spellbook that he's probably never personally seen. Amram had to adjust these wards to protect against this sort of spell. And you're right, Nicole. In hindsight, they should have built up these wards against every possible spell in the first place. But they're only Fae, and like us humans, they are not all-seeing and all-knowing.
Well, speaking of seeing, Elaine has an idea of who can ally with them. The queen who was cursed, which brings the room to a halting silence. Feyre immediately goes to explain to the room that it's the queen who was cursed by the cauldron that the ravens were discussing, but not that one, the other. Which Azriel's like, what other? Like, what are you talking about? Quote, the queen with the feathers of flame. Duh, guys. This is another moment where Azriel asks questions instead of just thinking her to be mad. And you know what she does when someone asks her questions about her mutterings, quote unquote? She opens up about what she is seeing as a result. Who does not ask her questions, though, is Lucien, who instead asks Feyre if Elaine needs anything, which it's very kind, it's considerate, but Lucien, what a dig after Azriel is the one who responds saying that she doesn't need anything. The subtext here being Azriel knows her needs better than her own mate. To be fair, because we like to play devil's advocate, apparently me, not when it's the King of Hybern, but when it's anyone else. She has spent more time with
devil's
Azriel.
Advocate. It's just looking from his point of view, okay?
The devil's something. She has spent more time with Azriel. Also, as Feyre notes later, Azriel can hear things that others cannot. Things said and unsaid. He has suffered long before he was understood and long before he understood what gifts he possessed. He is very much like Elaine. But above all, Azriel talks to her while the others talk as if she's not in the room because, in their defense, to them, she's not. She is lost to her own madness. Azriel knows that she is still in there, which is why, with Elaine staring at Azriel, it dawns on him, quote, a seer. He said more to himself than to us. The cauldron made you a seer. Oh, let's talk about it, because it turns out that lovely, beautiful, endearing Elaine was gifted something by the cauldron, who also found her to be lovely, beautiful, and endearing. You know what it does, Lexi? It purrs in her presence. A few small predictions as to why this might have happened. All of these ideas that I'm about to list off came from the same Reddit article, which is just a gold mine, apparently. It was incredible, which we'll link that Reddit article in the show notes. Vespalicious, which mentioned how the mother poured from the cauldron itself to create life. So maybe when the cauldron encountered someone who was pure, optimistic, and full of life herself, it was drawn to her, almost seeing her as a similar person or as similar characteristics as the mother. So thus gifting something to her, saying, Mommy, and giving it back to her. Kataku expands on this idea. Because the cauldron has been used for destruction and power struggles for so long, i.e. the Daglin, Hibern. When it encountered someone who loves to create and is so pure, it wanted to give her a gift in return. And lastly, Kate Marie has a great theory about this. There is a possibility that Elaine will turn barren lands fruitful again, much like my Super Mario Bridge of their minds, but in like real life. Kate Marie mentions in this moment like replanting, like wastelands, replanting them, giving them life again. I'm also going to throw in my giving life back to starving places metaphorically. For instance, the Spring Court. That place is starved of anything with a soul right now. So giving life back into places, again, metaphorically, as opposed to a flower bridge. But the Cauldron recognized Elaine as another creator. And because of that, it feels a kind of kinship towards her and feels drawn to her so that they can create something together with their combined powers. All of this together, this might mean Elaine is going to be super duper powerful. Like Nesta, Elaine has powers from the Cauldron itself, but unlike Nesta, who used her claws and teeth to take from the Cauldron deemed Elaine worthy and gifted her power. I think we're in for a wild ride with this worthy enough of a power from the Cauldron Elaine. With this gift coming to light for the group, Elaine's eyes begin to come to life again. Quote, as if the understanding, our understanding, it freed her from whatever murky realm she'd been in. Yay, Elaine!
I just love how this realization and understanding pulls her out and makes her normal sounding. Feyre probably hasn't heard her sister speak with this kind of clarity since she visited them at the Archeron Manor back in the mortal realm several months ago, more than several months ago. We also get another mention of Mor's power, which, wow, I still might not understand it, but I take back what I said a while back about us not really seeing much of her power. I mean, it's just small here and there, but I will take what I can get. Quote, Mor at last blinked, mouth parting, like that magic of hers had at last solved some puzzle. Slowly, clearly, she nodded. And then Lucian's metal eye that can detect magic whirls as it looks over her sister. Maybe it's identifying her specialness as well. It's like this clarity that she's a seer helped everyone be able to identify it at last with their own unique magic.
I have a very different take.
Oh,
stay tuned for Maasverse Madness.
All right, then.
I behind the scenes, I texted Lauren from Book Huddle last night about this because I needed to talk to someone who wasn't you because I wanted to tell it to you live on air. And
I was going to say, why am I not part of these conversations?
Because you haven't finished Kingdom of Ash, woman. And I texted her and we were back and forth for like solid 30 minutes of just like pulling articles, and like it left us both with our mouths dropped open. Shouts to you, Lauren. Love ya.
Like you, Nicole, I'm excited to learn more about Elaine's power and how great and powerful it must be since she also came from the Cauldron itself. Not anything like Nesta's, which is of course death, but maybe it's the opposite, which is life. Seers can see the future of what's to come in life. I don't know, maybe that's a stretch since she's also seeing Cassian's death. But anyway, I love these little lines about how she's consciously listening to her inner magic now. Like she's not afraid to look inward, and now she knows the right questions to ask herself to gain more understanding of what is being internally shown to her. It's described as her being able to look in the right direction now at what had previously rattled her mind, versus it casting like a murky and misunderstood shadow over Elaine. Elaine shares that the sixth queen is alive and that they, meaning the other mortal queens, sold her to, quote, some darkness, to some sorcerer lord. I can never see him, what he is. She is, of course, talking about Koschei, the oldest brother of the Bone Carver and the Weaver. He is a very powerful death god confined to this lake on the continent. But because of his great power, or maybe even because he is not of this world, Elaine cannot see him. She goes on to say, quote, there is an onyx box that he possesses, more vital than anything, save for them, the girls. He keeps other girls, others so like her. By day, she is one form, by night, human again. In Silver Flames, Vasa will tell us that Koschei planted the idea of Vasa coming to him in the mortal queen's minds, so this means that he specifically wanted her. Why? Could Vasa be the descendant of the ancient Fae warrior that imprisoned Koschei? Could she be central to Koschei getting himself out of this containment spell that perhaps her ancestor put him in? If so, though, why would he agree to let her temporarily go? I'm assuming it is ultimately for his own gains, and Vasa just doesn't realize it yet. I just can't wait to speculate this more in Silver Flames. Let's go into this onyx box, because in an earlier vision, Elaine could see a box of black stone, which we can assume is the same box. There are versions of a theory that it is made of the same black stone that is on Ramiel, which is of course considered sacred. And there is a connection between these black stones and the mountain and the lake, like there's some great magic tying it all together. Elaine does say, quote, "There is a lake deep in the continent, I think, hidden amongst the mountains and ancient forests." Another sacred mountain in our story, perhaps? The character Koschei is also directly from Russian folklore, nicknamed the Immortal or the Deathless. And in this tale, his death is hidden in a box. So in our story, could Koschei's soul or something like that be trapped in this black box that is more vital to him than anything? In the folklore, this Koschei also entrapped women. So what do these women mean to him in our story? I have no idea. Yes, Nicole?
So this isn't about the women, but in the Russian folklore story, there is this onyx box. There's an egg in it. I don't know the significance of the egg. I didn't look into that part of the story, but it is hidden under a mountain where Ivan, the guy who comes to save the day and save the princess and yada yada from Koschei.
The son of a pine tree?
The son of a pine tree! He comes to save... He comes to this mountain to get the box. The box is under a mountain. Ramiel? If it's made of a similar material, what if the box is hidden under... I mean, I know that's kind of a hike for Koschei, but still.
Let's reevaluate that when Bryaxis goes to Ramiel and Bryaxis is working with Koschei. We will talk about that in Silver Flames because I think there's definitely more to that. Yes. Let's bring it back to the other women trapped in this lake and have feathers white as snow, as Elaine explains. Quote, "They glide across the water while she, Vasa, rages through the skies above." Sounds like these other women are swans, right? I searched for the word swan in all of the ACOWAR books, and honestly, I didn't find anything. I did find something relatively small, but something in the Throne of Glass series, though. So pause until Maasverse Madness. I think it's a given that Koschei will be the big bad villain in the next ACOWAR book. He's been lurking in the shadows so far in the series, but he's so powerful and so mysterious, and his story is very open-ended that I just can't wait to meet him. I love a good villain, even if he's evil and imprisons women. That's not cool, Koschei. But again, we love a good villain, and I think that it's really setting him up to be a big bad villain.
Yeah, agreed.
It may be a fool's hope, but learning of the sixth mortal queen who might be on their side, our crew is desperate enough to see this opportunity through. It's a big stretch with all the roadblocks, like an evil sorcerer imprisoning the queen for starters, but they need to take every single chance they possibly can get to get allies on their side to defeat Hybern. Vasa is the mortal queen of Scathia, which is the smallest among the queen's realms and lies along the wall to the east. That's quite a hike for them to all get way west towards Prythian.
Well, didn't you know that Prythian is actually on the east side of the continent?
Going back to our SJM not being able to read a map and there's an edit issue.
Do you know what else is interesting about Scathia, though, Lexi?
What's that, Nicole?
It is rich in trade and arms. Trade, you say? It sounds like Papa Archeron has been trading with Scathia. Oh, you mean that place that he rolls up into battle with? Coincidence? I think not. Also, rich in arms. Nice little foreshadowing for the aid that they bring to battle later in this book. But enough of my spice trade.
I think that was the shortest rant you ever went on about the spice watch.
It's because I built it up so much that now I can just put little droplets in and people know what I'm talking about, I hope. Someday I'll do a huge video about it and just do the entire spice trade of Prythian. So the question is, who is going to go and get this queen and bring them to their side? Originally, Moore is the one who raises her hand, which I do have to wonder. Moore fell in love with Andromache on the continent. The continent is where she was able to really be herself and let her love for women really out. I wonder if her raising her hand to go has something to do with that. It also might have something to do with the fact that Kier is coming to Valaris and she wants to be out of there. However, everyone's like, no more, sit down. Feyre is about to speak up and offer herself because she still believes that she's not vital, which I just... Feyre! However, a different voice beats her to it. Lucien, who is staring at Elaine as he says it. Let us take a moment and just quickly highlight how dangerous this mission is. We don't know the state of the Queen's curse. It very well could be and is very bad because it's the super powerful Death Lord that controls her. Secondly, the human side of the continent is a bad place for Fae to go. When Rhys is prepping to winnow Lucien in, Azriel's reports say, quote, "It was too watched, too dangerous, even for one of our own, even for the most powerful High Lord in history." And he's just dropping him off on the sidewalk, basically, of the continent. I would love to know more about this, but I don't think we're going to get that in our series, and that's okay. Thirdly, it would have to be Lucien all by himself. But that's actually a huge plus for him because Lucien don't need no guards. He travels faster on his own anyway. It also turns out that Lucien's eye can see through spells, glamours, and other things that a normal Fae eye cannot see.
And a fandom gets really confused because he couldn't see Feyre's glamour earlier this book.
I stand by my theory that he can see that a glamour is there, but he can't see through.
I agree. We can talk all day long about what the actual situation was, but it might be one of those cauldron boil me moments.
Maybe because of this eye, it will help him find and break the curse, which, pause for a moment, he is the son of Helion Spellcleaver. I have another crack theory this episode. Apparently, this is just my crack theory episode. Do we think that he will be the one to rescue Vassa and possibly the other girls from Koschei's entrapment because he is able to cleave those spells apart? He is Ivan Sosnovich, aka the son of a pine tree in Russian folklore?
So I don't think so, at least not that I'll call it straightforward, because Helion himself does try to break the curse on Vassa, but it's woven into her blood and he is unable to break that curse because the spell is just too powerful, showing how otherworldly Koschei is.
Maybe Lucien and Elaine together can break it?
And then she lets Lucien go and live happily ever after with Vassa?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I have no idea who's going to end up with who. It has actually stumped me. However, there is more to Lucien going to the continent's resume than just his eye. As he notes, he did not belong in the Autumn Court. No longer is he welcome home, or he's Spring Court. Absolutely Spring Court. He can no longer sit here and, quote, do nothing. Oh, he is an emissary. This is what his skills are made for. However, that do-nothing language is so incredibly sad because he feels like he is not needed here by Elaine anymore. Not even anymore, period. He was never here. He feels like he was never needed here by Elaine. In his eyes, he isn't even helping her heal. He doesn't even understand her needs, as Azriel just demonstrated.
Elaine doesn't want or need Lucien, and he ultimately wants to do what is best for her and wants to be respectful to her. He recognizes what is best for her might not involve him. In fact, her having space from him is probably the best thing for her. So he does the noble, respectable thing, and I'm really proud of Lucien. That must have been really hard for him.
Oh, that's so sad. He sees this opportunity to be useful again and to have a purpose. Go get the queen and bring her or ideally her army as well to the cause. You can almost hear Azriel going like, yay, get out of here.
So one real quick thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit in later episodes, but the fandom that really ships Elaine and Azriel bring up that Lucien isn't there for Elaine in the way that Azriel is. Azriel is the one who saves her. Azriel is the one who is there for her. And of course, we have already seen that with Lucien here. But Lucien is also literally leaving for the continent, so he is not physically there to, say, go to Hybern to rescue her and other big things like that cater to Azriel and Elaine ultimately ending up together. I'm not saying anything against how that means that they won't end up together, but I'm simply pointing out Lucien left partly for Elaine's best interest, and he is simply physically not there to be able to help her in the continuation that Azriel is.
Absolutely. Favorite notices that even as Lucien is making this decision, his voice is changing, sounding assertive for the first time in a long time. I'd imagine the last time she heard this kind of voice from Lucien was actually back in ACOWAR, not ACOMAF, ACOWAR, 2 books ago, pre-Under the Mountain with Tamlin.
Oh, absolutely. Back when he was trying to go for Plan B. The good old simple days of our deep dives.
You missed those days where like Maasverse Madness were like 4 minutes.
Or it wasn't even in the episode. Yep. I also love this little nod to fate. You know that I love any mention of fate here. Quote, Lucien had indeed been studying all those maps lately, perhaps at the quiet behest of whatever force had guided us all.
As Lucien preps to depart the next day, he is dressed in Illyrian leathers with an Illyrian sword and daggers all strapped to him, courtesy of Cassian offering Lucien to have at his personal stash, like free for all, which is a huge vote of trust from Cassian. I love that. The time has come, though. Rhys extends his hand to Lucien, readying to winnow. Lucien takes a moment to study Rhys's outstretched hand, then Rhys's face. In just a few days of Lucien being in the Night Court, these two have cultivated an almost truce/trust with one another, all through Lucien's advice and knowledge and just him being a good dude. In this moment, we cannot help but remember the first time we saw them interact in ACOTAR, though. Rhys was making Lucien beg on the ground next to Tamlin, and then Under the Mountain in the throne room, Rhys was almost ordered to wipe Lucien's mind clean. Now look at them. Quote, Lucien took Rhys's hand. That silent offer not only transportation, but just as the winnow wind takes them away, Elaine appears at the top of the stairs and her mates' gazes lock and hold on each other. But she does not say anything to him. So with a bow of his head, eyes filled with longing and sadness, Lucien, he turns away from Elaine and instead towards Rhys. And Elaine takes a step towards him. Sadly, though, it's too late. Rhys and Lucien vanish. We've got to unpack this. First, I have to wonder. So the night prior, after Lucien's decided to be the one to go to the continent, yada, 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 everyone leaves the room except for Elaine and Lucien, which finally they give them a moment to be together alone. But I'm guessing that something was either said, or I'll even say felt, in that exchange that A, made her want to take a step, and B, made her want to stare at the top of the staircase and say a nonverbal goodbye to him in the first place.
I guess I assumed that words were not exchanged, or that very few very cordial words were exchanged. And the step to him was more of that pull, the I can't stay away, that is so there for mating bonds, that made her take that step toward him, because something deep within her is drawn toward him, but her conscious mind and heart don't want that.
I think it is a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I don't think that any big romantic gestures happened the night before. I do think it was just a moment for them to be alone together in a room and just feel only each other. Not like bodies, but just like the energies of each other. Secondly, from the scene, I think because Elaine says nothing to him and doesn't move his way while he's looking at her, it's not until he turns away that she takes a step. I think it's just further confirmation to him that she does not need him. At least that's what he believes. And I'm not faulting Elaine in any way for this. She doesn't owe him anything. She doesn't owe him to be the damsel in distress. And in fact, I'm thrilled she's not that way. But you do have to wonder, if Lucien saw that step, what would have happened? Because later, after the battle, she does metaphorically step towards him and say, would you like to come and stay in Velaris? Which he happily accepts, which is just so sweet.
Well, let's wrap up this stretch of chapters on a rather ominous note. Speaking of a lot of things happening, Amren storms into the townhouse, her face calm, but her eyes swirling with rage. And she gives the bone-chilling news Varian has sent to her. Quote, Hybern has attacked the summer court. They lay siege to Adriata as we speak. In other words, friends, get ready for a crazy next episode.
I love a battle episode. They're always so fun. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Lexi, I just got the most perfect, hilarious, funny image in my head, and that is Amren sitting in a therapist's office, staring at her therapist, not saying a single word, but she would still get a lot of value in it. Anyway, therapy has been an invaluable tool for me, and I know, Lexi, it has been for you as well recently.
That's right. I started therapy several months ago, and it has been so great to help me, first of all, just have a safe space just to talk about anything and everything, and also being asked the right questions to help me get more clarity for myself, and then to be able to take real action in my life. A big thing for me is work-life balance, connecting more with my partner, and overcoming imposter syndrome.
If you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is so easy to get started. BetterHelp is entirely online. We both do online therapy because it gives you the opportunity to participate from therapy in your own home on your own schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. Listen, we are all busy. It is not always feasible to go to a therapist's office in person on a regular basis. BetterHelp makes showing up for yourself easy.
Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/FFG today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FFG. Let's turn our full attention to foreshadowing important moments in the rest of this book and the series. The Nefel story's message about how even an hour of training can make a difference does speak true. When escaping from the Hybern camp, Feyre will need to fly. Tamlin's wind power will actually help her, which is a similar power to the Seraphim people too. I just thought that was a nice little nod. Anyway, after their wing play, Rhys says, "That was a fun experiment." Oh, you two will have so much fun with that experiment that you'll make a baby when she's an Illyrian with wings.
Lucian is exploring the city of Alaris, and he is itching to get out into the city on his own. That is because he is in contact with Nuan from the Dawn Court to get samples of the Faebane after Hybern used it on the attack so that she can make an antidote. Cassian drops off Nesta at the House of Wind, quote, his hands clenched and slackened at his sides as if he were trying to loosen the feel of her from his palms. Hello, mating bond hint. Nesta goes into the library and learns all about the priestesses, which she will be spending a lot of time in said library with some new priestess friends. The Ravens saying in regards to Briellen, quote, "Oh, you should hear how she talks, Nesta Archeron, the things she wants to do to you when Hybern is done. And I give you silver flames." Another big silver flames foreshadowing. Cassian thinking about Nesta, quote, "Strength, such untapped strength in that slim, beautiful body. Soon, Cassian."
Mor recalls the people of Scathia on the continent, that they were a mounted cavalry. Her familiarity with the continent and its mortal queens is one foreshadowing of her relationship with the other mortal queen's ancestor, and also she relates to this army with horses, foreshadowing to her own love of horses and riding. Me too, girl, me too. Feyre momentarily wonders what the severing of the mating bond would do to her. Well, she will, unfortunately, but only for a few minutes, learn just how silent and void that is. And she and Rhys will ensure they never, ever, never, ever experience the severing of their mating bond.
Every episode, Lexi is going to sip some tea with the Suriel and walk us through a world building topic to help us better understand the world and the people in it. Lexi, what's today's Suriel tea time?
Today's Suriel topic is the Ouroboros mirror. The bone carver introduced it to us last episode, but as we're learning more about this unique mirror and looking ahead to the role it'll play ahead of the big battle, I figured we should dedicate a Suriel tea time to it. Plus, the High Fae voted for it, so here you go. The Ouroboros mirror is a notoriously powerful and ancient mirror that shows the looker who and what they truly are. This mirror is considered a window to the world, where all could be seen and all could be told through its dark surface. To take it and claim it, one must successfully look into the mirror. It is a very rare person to face who they are at their core and not run from it, not be broken by the truth reflecting back at them. The Ouroboros shows all of who the person is, every despicable and unholy inch of them. As the bone carver explains, some gaze upon the mirror and don't even realize that the horror they're seeing is them, even as the terror of it drives them mad. Others, with big egos, look upon it and are shattered by the small, sorry creature that reveals who they really are within. Every known philosopher has ruminated on the mirror. According to all records of the Ouroboros, every single person who has dared look in the mirror has been unsuccessful. They have all either gone mad, become broken beyond repair, or approached it but then ran away in terror. There are 0 accounts of anyone who has faced what lurked within the mirror, mastered it, and walked away with the mirror in their possession, except for the Weaver, but we'll get to her in a moment. There is absolutely no loophole, no way around having to face the mirror in order to possess it. You must face the terror within it to claim it. Have I mentioned that yet? The Bone Carver wants this mirror for 2 reasons. 1, it is a test to see if Feyre can face who she truly is. If she is successful, she is worthy of his help. And number 2, we can also assume that the Bone Carver wants to look at the mirror to see his true reflection, which he is otherwise unable to do because of the nature of his shapeshifter magic. In appearance, the Ouroboros mirror is a massive round disc encased in bronze. It stands a little taller than Feyre, so let's say it's just shy of 6 feet. Like the real-world ancient symbol of Ouroboros, the metal frame around it is the design of a serpent devouring its own tail. Let's go into the history of the Ouroboros mirror. It is even older than death gods like the Bone Carver and his siblings, who we assume arrived in this world before Fionn defeated the Daglin and crowned himself High King, and definitely long before the High Lords of Prythian. All of this to say, we can speculate the Ouroboros mirror is tens of thousands of years old. It used to belong to Striga before she became the Weaver and confined to her cottage. Philosophers speaking of the Ouroboros refer to her as the Dark Queen who once possessed it and cherished it. Because yes, she especially loved the Ouroboros among her mirror collection and spent lots of time in her black castle gazing at her beautiful young-looking self. It is unknown if she was already insane enough to be able to look in it, or if looking in the mirror contributed to her insanity. There has also been speculation if whatever evil lurked in her has tainted the mirror, and that's at least partly why it is so dangerous. After Striga's confinement, the Ouroboros mirror somehow, someway came into Mor's ancestors' possession. Long ago, Mor's lineage used to be the High Lord of the Night Court, so I wonder if this mirror was entrusted with one of the first High Lords of the Night Court. We just don't know how it came into Mor's family's possession because there are no records of anyone mastering it to even gain possession of it. So I don't know if that High Lord would have gained possession because they couldn't have looked in the mirror. Anyway, I don't know. Bottom line is the Ouroboros mirror is an heirloom in the Court of Nightmares, and it currently belongs to Keir, Mor's father. Keir tells Feyre that she is welcome to have the Ouroboros if she can successfully look upon it and take it. And spoiler, she will. While Feyre will be the only person in recorded history to master the mirror, facing the mirror is one of the hardest things she'll ever endure. She'll cower and rage and weep, slam her fists into it, curl up and tremble at every horrific and cruel and selfish thing that makes up the monster within her. But she won't turn away from it. She will overcome the self-loathing and have to accept her true self completely laid bare. And she will have to forgive herself and embrace all of who she is. Quote, only I could allow the bad to break me. Only I could own it, embrace it. And when I learned that, the Ouroboros had yielded to me. Sounds like a lifetime of intense therapy all crammed into one session. Whew.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
And that, friends, is our Suriel Teatime on the Ouroboros mirror.
Let us close out the ACOWAR only part of this episode with our Fae-vorite Moments.
Feyre comments that the pine tree wasn't there a moment ago, and from here on, all I will ever think of is son of a pine tree.
Amberyn telling Feyre, quote, not all magic was flash and glittering, and then shooing her out of the dining room. What a beautiful dig at her and Rhys's magic. I just love it. In this stretch, I loved seeing Lucien being asked for suggestions and being able to give them freely. Yay for being appreciated. I'm sad you're immediately leaving. Asriel and Cassian having very different reactions to Feyre not being able to train. Cassian demanding what the hell is wrong with her, and Asriel bringing a tin of salve to help with her aches. And then last but not least, Asriel's power just being absolutely fascinating. He was up on the roof and then he literally steps out of the shadow into the foyer. Like, screw any other power in ACOWAR. I want to be a shadow singer.
All right, friends, it is time to end our ACOWAR only part of today's episode. We are going to be moving shortly into Maasverse Madness. Today's Maasverse Madness includes spoilers for the entire Maasverse, including Crescent City and the Throne of Glass series. So if you have not read all of these books, this is where we part ways. But before you go, reminder that next episode we will be covering ACOWAR chapters 35 through 41.
A huge shout out to our new members of the Inner Circle tier on Patreon.
We are so excited to welcome Jensen, Rebecca E, Carolina D, Courtney, Rebecca S, Olivia, Randy, Bethany, Lee, Raquel, and Sarah B.
Also, Jeannie, Nikki 4147, Abby, Jessica L, Celeste, Christina V, Yara, Alicia M, Katie C, Alicia R, Natalie E, Jillian, Jordan Q, and Elizabeth F.
And we're not done because you all are absolutely amazing. Michelle D, Taylor C, Jacqueline, Michelle A, Sharon, Maria G, Carissa, Kimber, Anna F, Lauren J, Megan M, and Becky F.
And we're still not done. Christina Nina, 19. Heather E, Peyton M, Rachel L, Nadia, Madison A, Shaban R, Kayla F, Jacinta, Faith C, Michaela L, Tanja, and last but not least, Lexi P. You guys are amazing.
We love you so much. And also, we apologize if we mispronounced anything. We really are trying our best.
Truly.
And if you're like, wait a second, I also want a name shout out on an episode, go check out our Patreon party. We have those 3 tiers and we hope to see you there. And of course, if you're not following us on Instagram and TikTok, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Last but not least, before we get into Maasverse Madness, you know the drill. Please rate and review the podcast. It takes 2 seconds and it's one of the most positive, helpful things that you can do for not just this podcast, but any podcast you listen to. Let's get into the Maasverse Madness. I'm so excited.
Me too. We are, of course, now entering our Maasverse Madness segment of the episode where we call out series crossover references and, of course, discuss theories. Today, we are discussing spoilers from both the Throne of Glass and Crescent City series, so please only continue listening if you've read both series.
I want to start with Draken's people, the Seraphim, because they are basically angels, which what we know from the Malachim angels in Crescent City, they were created by the Asteri. Were the Seraphim then created by the Daglin? Now, that doesn't make them bad because not all the angels in Crescent City are bad, but in Crescent City, some of the angels' powers, including Micah's, they include wind, which wind and air are the Seraphim's powers.
We do know that the Illyrians were bred by the Daglin, so I bet that they were.
I think you're right. So if Coast J is Daglin, I'm not saying he is, but just in case he is, does that mean that he's actually attempting to make a new breed of angels or like fire angels, just like the Asteri created archangels in Crescent City?
Interesting.
Is that a fun theory or is that an interesting theory?
I mean, that's me getting a little technical with her being a fire bird versus with wings, but I like where your head is at. I also just don't think that he is a Daglin.
That's true. I definitely think the Seraphim were created by the
100%,
Daglin.
especially because the Illyrians were. Yes.
So good. Okay, I've been foaming at the mouth to talk about this since we started this episode. Let's talk about seers in the Maasverse because they exist, and 9 times out of 10, it is a witch, which got me thinking. Because in the scene where Azriel says seer, Elaine turned to Moore, who was now gaping at my sister from her spot beside her on the couch. Elaine says, "Is that what this is?" Why is she asking Moore specifically?
I know where you're going with this.
Then, quote, Moore at last blinked, mouth parting, like that magic of hers had at last solved some puzzle. Slowly, clearly, she nodded. Why would Elaine be asking Moore for confirmation if she's a seer, especially if seer magic is known to being tied to witches in the Maasverse? Now, several options here. This could be a huge neon sign that the Archerons are actually descendants from witches instead, which actually got me thinking during your Suriel Teatime. If the Archerons are descendants from witches, and let's say the Ouroboros mirror is a witch mirror, no wonder Fae-vorite could master it. Now, I did get texting with our good friend Lauren from Book Huddle, and she found this. And oh my God, so good. There are theories around the Archeron sisters being descendants from witches, with about the 45,000 million times that Nesta is mentioned being a witch in Silver Flames and ACOWAR. So there's a lot of theories around it. So Lauren went down a rabbit hole with me. Do you know what the word Kraken means?
Tell me.
It means cauldron.
No.
Are the Archerons descendants from the Kraken witch line, or does the cauldron turn them into Kraken witches? Because other than the Ouroboros mirror, like I just mentioned, there is not really any tie with Feyre being a witch. Now, we do know that the Krakens look much more high Fae than they do like Manon, who with the iron teeth and all that kind of stuff. So I'm spiraling. I'm completely spiraling. There's about two different options that I really and truly see. Number one is that they're descendants from witches. And the second is that they were created as witches. Actually, there is a third. And that is that Moore this is back on my Moore is a descendant from the Kraken witch line. And no fucking wonder Elaine is like, hi, other witch in the room. Is that what this is? Is I like confirming with you? Now, on another note, in Throne of Glass, like book 1, Throne of Glass, Selena mentions how, quote, seers had once used Bloodbane as a drug to view spirits from other worlds. Bloodbane, aka Faebane, aka something that exists in this ACOTAR world. I'm sorry, what? What could this mean? I'm freaking out. But I'm not done, because let's talk about the Ouroboros mirror. Because when Feyre is looking into research around it, some of the research suggests that whatever evil taints the Weaver of the Wood also taints the mirror too. The research says, quote, though they hadn't known her name, only that a dark queen had once had it. Dark Queen we mentioned this episode. Black Castle we mentioned last episode. Black Blood, the Weaver of the Wood have black blood. Is she Vogue? Maybe even a Vogue queen, which...
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Now, if that's the case, that means that the Archerons, if they are a descendant from witches, they would have some Vogue blood in them. Which also might be another reason why they are... because
the crotchet witches. Yep. Okay, so I'm tracking.
All witches all witches are part Vogue. That would mean that they'd have some Vogue blood in them. So going back to the fact that this might be a witch mirror, though, one of the ways it could have ended up in Moore's family line is if she is a descendant from the Kraken witches. That might be how it ended up in their possession. Maybe it wasn't theirs when they came to this world, because the Ouroboros mirror was here long before they were. But maybe they were the ones who took it because they were the witch clan of the world.
Maybe.
Okay, I need to calm my heart rate down because I'm freaking out. Well, okay, question. Do you think that at some point Elaine might take Faebane / Bloodbane and view spirits from another world? Because I think so.
Yes, I could definitely see that. Absolutely. Although it's supposed to nullify powers, and we know that it worked on Nesta, so it has nothing to do with the Cauldron.
That's true.
So that would be a really crazy thing for that to be a very unique thing only for Elaine. It's not out of the question by any means, but just saying.
I think if someone hadn't read the entire Maasverse and remembered that one line from when Selena is fighting Cain in Throne of Glass, it would be a hard pill to swallow.
I will also throw out that Throne of Glass was written so long before the series that it's hard to connect those early books, I think. Agreed. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but that kind of deep Easter egg might be more of just a similar thing that is in two different worlds, and that's that. Continuing our conversation about how Koschei turns the other women trapped at his lake into swans, the only other mention in the Maasverse about swans, at least I will be honest, I do not have the ebook version of Crescent City 1 or 2, so assuming that it is not in either of those books, the only reference is in reference to Mab, the youngest of the three legendary Fae queens. Her animal form was a swan, and she was heavily associated with the element of water. Healing was her ability. That's where Elaine gets her own healing powers from. I have no idea how she could be connected to these women Koschei have, but that is the one swan parallel I found in the Maasverse, and of course it is connected to Koschei, who I definitely think we are going to see some other connections to with the other realms there. So anyway, so just keep this in mind for the next ACOWAR book, assuming we learn more about Koschei and he's the big bad?
I did a quick ebook search. There are 2 mentions of swans in A House of Sky and Breath. There were none in Earth and Blood. The first one was Madame Kira, who is the dance instructor. She is a swan shifter. And one time in Therion's POV, the River Queen's daughter had emerged from the mists in a pale oak boat pulled by a bevy of snow white swans. I don't think it's related, but it's just fun.
No, that's good for me to know. And that also is just another reminder that I really do need to get the ebook versions of Crescent City 1 or 2. I know. I just listened to the audiobook. I know I need to do that. My bad.
Crazy.
All right. Anyway, friends, next episode, we are covering chapters 35 through 41. We are going to Adriata. We got a whole lot of stuff to cover. Get excited.
Battle episode. We love it. Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, a.k.a. our sanity manager, who really lived up to his name this past week. We freaking love ya. And last but not least, do not forget to share this episode with your fellow ACOWAR friends. If your friends also think Bryaxis is cute and cuddly, you can send them this episode because someone's gotta agree with them, and it's Fae-vorite. All right, friends, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Draken means snake and is considered an emblem.
Perhaps at the quiet behest of whatever force had juiced us all.
That's not the right word. Juiced us all.
I'm pretty sure it's guided. This is what happens when I do work late nights. Okay.